Hi, everybody. Welcome to the new normal. I have a special treat. My friend Chris Marcus from Arcadia Economics is joining us to explain at a very basic level, I hope, what the IMF is talking about with the SDR and what is going on in our financial system and globally. There's words flying around and stuff going on. I know it's significant. I don't understand it. And thankfully, he jumped on in the live chat today. I missed a lot of his comments because I was clicking around from different screens. And so he offered to come on and help kind of unpack some of this stuff. So you guys will be right back with Chris Marcus from Arcadia Economics. This is just for Patreon, so don't share this until we release it for public. But we'll be right back. Chris, thanks so much for joining us. I know you were trying to help me in the chat. I apologize. I did not see your comments. I was clicking around from screen to screen, and to be totally honest, I could not read the comments. So I appreciate you joining me on this to help me try to unpack this. I'm not sure where to start. I know I was sending you some links and asking a lot of questions, and I appreciate that you thought I understood at a little higher level than I really did. I don't even know where to start on this. Do we start at the IMF with these comments about the August 23rd, which seemed so obvious to you? You were like, yeah, Lisa, we've been talking about this for days now. Or is it more of the Afghanistan gold thing, and then the guy talking about the DBA, or I can't even remember what the other term was. I don't even know where to start unpacking this. Help me out.
Well, yeah, that's a great tweet from the IMF, huh?
What is this?
I think you sent this to me, and at first I thought, it was one of those things like a magic eye where you like read something and then you're like, oh, I didn't see the comma, which completely changes the meaning, or the quotes. But then I'm like, I think those all four choices are August 23rd. I mean, is that like a hint, or, what they're going to do with their $650 billion of SDRs? Well, I guess to say I don't have a complete clue wouldn't be completely accurate. Maybe to begin here, I'm not intentionally trying to sound cryptic, but I mean, I guess that's part of how finance goes. Maybe this efficient market hypothesis is a load of junk that everybody gets the same information at the exact same time and processes it in the same way. So there's a ton of things that I hear out there. I feel like it's kind of coming closer into picture, and I'll do my best I will phrase things where I feel confident. This I know versus like, for example, if I can still see straight, it seems as if I'm incredibly confident, Lisa, because I guess you're here to back me up, that the IMF did send out a tweet saying, quiz time, when will countries receive their quota of US 650 billion SDR allocations? August 23rd, August 23rd, August 23rd, or August 23rd? I mean, am I reading that correctly, or is that right?
That's where I'm like, am I in an alternate reality? Can you in the simplest form explain what an SDR and why this is a significant statement to the general public? Like, what does this mean? What is an SDR? Why is it created? What is the situation that this would, like, what does this mean in the most basic form?
It means it's paper junk. It means it's paper junk. 5 words. That was pretty concise, especially for me. SDRs are a form of paper junk. They're all forms of paper junk. Just like the Bitcoin CME future was a form of paper junk. And that weasel, what's his name? John Carlo. I'm sure you remember him. Remember when Bix was ranting about him a couple of years back.
Oh, yes.
The guy that said that one of the untold successes of the Trump administration was they popped the Bitcoin bubble. And they list Trump, CFTC, Mnuchin. They listed Gary Cohn by name. I didn't think he was a government official. I thought he was just part of Goldman Sachs. I mean, Mnuchin's Goldman Sachs. You would think these guys all still talk. Hank Paulson was Goldman Sachs. He goes into the government. I mean, Goldman Sachs may as well be our government at this point. On a quick side tangent here, if I may, though. If you go to Greece, they're actually quite familiar that Goldman Sachs is actually their president. So when I see something like this, it's kind of like wink, wink, here it comes, idiots. Although,
so practically, what does this do to the everyday American, or is this a global effect? What does this do to the economy of the world, America? Like, I don't understand the effect of this.
I think this will put one of the final bricks into the wall surrounding the mausoleum around the deep state's coffin, which they are preparing for themselves so that they can drink and drug themselves into excess and fall quietly into their grave and go away. Is on a broader level how I see what's happening. And if I may take a step back, perhaps to put that into context, you remember last week, in fact, this is great that I'm here with you, because I was wondering, I don't know if I actually said this on my show or one of these different shows, but you remember last week leading up to August 15th, the 50-year anniversary of the Nixon shock, I was saying I'm hearing a lot of things. I'm not sure how to process them, but it almost feels as if we're going to feel something like the opposite of 9/11, like just wild and insane, but instead of completely horrific, in a positive way. And like, I didn't even know what that meant, but it was just like, I sum up all of the different things I'm hearing, reading, and thinking about. That was just this feeling that, as I've learned, I used to be very analytical, and then I've learned, trust your intuition, hear what these things are telling you. You remember we talked about that last week, right?
Right.
Now, all right, I get it. The silver price is still, it's probably $1 or $2 lower than it was even before the 15th. And I think Cliff has helped put this into perspective. And it's almost like now a lot of what he's talked about for years, and especially perhaps how his model works, where it's like, if you're reading the headlines, you can see themes. The subliminals are mixed in there also. And it's like, you put a comma here, it can change the meaning. It's like, remember that episode of The Simpsons where they're like, remove more space dust? It was like how to cook humans. And they're like, then you blew a little dust off. It was how to cook 4 humans. Then how to cook 40 humans. So there's a lot of fog around these things. And that I learned from my time in Wall Street, because after being there and being trained at a shop that knew what they were doing, and then getting into gold and silver, I mean, it's the same stuff we talk about now. I was just talking about it 10 years ago on the New York Stock Exchange. I'm like, wait a second, this doesn't make any sense. Like they said they were going to raise rates 20 years ago. And then every time they tried to raise it, think about this. It's not an accident the housing bubble collapsed when it did. You had Greenspan lower interest rates to 0% or 1% in 2004. He left them there for a year. When he tried to raise interest rates, the mortgage bubble collapsed. And to simplify that, they're always talking about how printing money is the magic economic balm. And a lot of people compare it to heroin, where it's like it feels great at the time, but like on the, printing money is great. Well, then like the unprinting is probably not going to feel so good. And they've been telling us for the 105, 110 years that the Fed's been around that they're going to unprint it one day and that there's independence between the Fed and the Treasury. I mean, well, it's kind of like basically every Ponzi scheme. You have, the weapons of mass destruction that not only didn't they exist, they knew they didn't exist. And it's like, Lisa, I know we've talked about it. A lot of the people that listen and have this perspective often feel like the lone wolf, but it's like a couple of years ago when they're saying George Bush died, which I've now, based on new released facts and evidence, I'm not you can dig into that if you'd like, but it's like when you think about it, it's like, wait a second, if they knew there weren't weapons of mass destruction, they sent American people in and got killed to kill people from other countries. I'm like, is this, what's the difference between this and what Hitler or Stalin did? I'm not. And then tack on that, who are the guys that did this? The Bush family. And if you trace their backgrounds, let's look at that resume. MK Ultra, while Bush was the CIA director, then he became de facto president under Reagan from 1980 to 1988. You have the Star Wars, that the program, which it was fine. Let's, make the plebeians watch it as a movie, but we never heard more about that. Here's another thing about September 11th, which was significant to me because I was there that day in downtown New York. And it's interesting. I've heard people say that if you look at a seismograph, it shows that either an earthquake or something nuclear went off. And then when you listen to Dr. Judy Woods describe how pretty darn good, the best explanation I've heard, where yes, I believe there were explosives involved, but she shows how the building comes down and was literally pulverized into dust. There's this one scene that she captures in particular where, the thing's coming down and you see for a second, there's still a steel beam. So we're not talking about it melting. And it's just like.
Yeah, I think that's those directed energy weapons, right? That they're talking about. And
that's what Judy Woods thinks. And she knows more about science than I do.
Yeah.
And then again, it was interesting. Ever since I've been here in Mexico, it's like a 4th of July fireworks finale for 5 hours a night with the lightning in the sky, to the point where I'm sitting there and wondering, what is lightning? I'm like, where does that come from? Is that just some natural thing? I mean, we're getting our science from NASA. And then in the end, what are they doing with HARP up in Alaska? I hear a lot of people who are smarter about science than me, the ones that don't work for the government, they say, well, yeah, that's a direct extension of Tesla's work. It was that distinct that anyone who studied what he's done sees like, yeah, well, this is the fingerprints. The same way you see the same fingerprints in this deep state matrix, whether it's finance, whether it's with the vaccines, whether it's with education, I saw it first in finance, and I think that's how it goes. Everybody sees it. It's this silent mafia that controls everywhere. So it's like you can't avoid it, but it's almost too mind-boggling. And maybe the epitome of that, again, you have this Bush family that, fine, Reagan, MK Ultra. Going back to the 40s, their Brown Brothers Harriman was financing the Nazis. Operation Paperclip, where did the CIA and the NSA come from? This was basically the Dulles brothers. I mean, if you think Dick Cheney was a piece of work, someone would read about the Dulles brothers, Alan and John Foster Dulles, who basically were saying to any Nazi scientist, no matter how many people you killed in whatever horrific fashion, as long as it was like a free agency, like the baseball teams, like, well, we don't want Russia to get them. So that's what, coming back to September 11th, where we have this war where there's a lot of unanswered questions that it sure looks like anyone in the government went out of their way to avoid answering in any sort of investigation. It's kind of like the nameless, faceless they. And I won't claim to have the first clue what actually happened last Sunday in Afghanistan, but it's like if you allow for, what I've done is allow for a moment, maybe Biden's on this side, or maybe he's setting this guy up, or you don't even know. I mean, I'm sure all these guys are turning on each other as we speak, but clearly something that whatever was the cause, the Taliban, which a lot of people seem to think they're getting these weapons from the CIA. Lisa, you've talked plenty on your channel, the connections between the families and these different groups. And, hey, what do I know? I'm just trying to make sense. But something happened where whatever this entire war was over, which cost trillions of dollars, let alone the trillions that have gone missing, lives, everything, and something unraveled. And would it have been weird if George Bush had gone on vacation on September 12th, 2001? Is this not, I mean, this, in terms of magnitudes of American historic events, it feels like that to me. It feels like the unwinding. And I mean, I see two sets of coverage of the event. There's one where it like makes it be like people are panicking.
Right.
And the other one, it looks like they're running along like they're like, hey, let's get beers before we go over to Bill's.
Yeah, and then they're out in bumper cars and eating ice cream and running by the plane, not getting sucked into the engines. Yeah, it's very bizarre. The whole thing is so bizarre.
CNN is selling the horrific version of it. Then they send the reporter who actually goes and talks to these people, and they're like sitting there, they look calm. And so I'm seeing two, they're saying -5 and positive 12.3 at the same time. Two wildly divergent pictures. And I don't know. I think it's a good time for people just to start really questioning, you know, who you trust and really not trusting, not giving away your trust, but using your own instinct after everything you've seen in your life, not taking Lisa's opinion or my opinion for it, but just seeing. I mean, you'll see the same event covered in two mutually divergent ways, which maybe one person's lying, maybe the other, maybe they're both lying. It maybe is all, sometimes it's even all of the above. It's like when two people are in a conversation, who's telling the truth? Maybe it's A, B, and C in ways you can't understand.
His, hers, and the truth. There's always three sides to the story, and everybody should take all that into kind of perspective. This guy, I don't know if this was some of what you were commenting on, but I thought this was something that was really standing out to me that I did not understand. But they're talking about what's going on in Afghanistan. This guy is somehow the DAB or involved with the DAB, which I don't even know what the DAB is in Afghanistan. But in Friday morning, he received a call notifying there would be no further USD shipments. And let's see. Oh, I'm going to end up finding the wrong place. But Saturday, the banks placed a very large USD bid. Customer withdrawals were accelerated. So it sounds like the Afghanistan people are trying to pull USD out of the banks, and they are being frozen. Interesting note was that the IMF approved the SDR 650 billion allocation recently. This is where this is all like, I'm seeing these things tie together, but I don't understand the significance of what they have to do with each other. And this guy is tweeting about it, and lawmakers urge Yellen to intervene at the IMF and prevent a Taliban-led Afghanistan from accessing 500 million in SDRs. So I guess the SDRs were supposed to go in from the IMF, and people are trying to get Yellen to stop that money to go from going in to Afghanistan. And so but then the Afghanistan people are trying to get their USD out. And then this guy is like, oh, we don't have the dollars. I mean, can you help me unpack that? And is that going to start? My gut is telling me we're going to have this banking holiday, that the banks are going to shut down, that we're going to see our banks shutting down here, or we're going to see some kind of bank closures here and a run on the banks here. Do you see that same thing happening here? Is this all connected? Am I way off?
I can feel your neurons cranking at hyper there. So
help me unpack this, or am I way off? Does this have anything to do? I feel like it's somehow connected, but I can't figure it out.
Of course, you've already figured it out. Here's the best part. My spare time, I don't know that I plan to do this, but I have some unusual hobbies. I've been reading this coding book. It's about 1,000 pages. It explains all the different ways they would decode ciphers and like all these wars. It's been going back thousands of years. It's quite complex. Watch the movie. Lisa, did you watch Under the Silver Lake yet?
I have not.
Well, I'll tell you what. Watch Under the Silver Lake, and all the questions will answer themselves for you.
Okay.
It's similar. Imagine if you're essentially asking me, how do you see where these subliminals are that are being used to indoctrinate you?
Okay.
So we can all do it in our own way. I mean, people sense when something feels off. If you walk into a room and there's, especially your mother, so it's like, the same way you can sense how your child is feeling. They can try and hide something, but you just,
Right.
so part of the magic trick that I've found helpful, at least the things I've been able to see, Cliff has talked about it quite a bit recently. Sometimes the right action is to rest. It's kind of like in music. If you had constant sound, there's no space. You don't lift weights every day of the week, 24 hours a day. And I think what you're experiencing is it's the same exact thing I'm experiencing. And I'm sure a lot of the people watching are feeling that in their own way as well. And I think part of it is just sometimes allowing time to pass, just not needing,
Like
we'll probably
overload.
Well, I mean, here's the thing. Like it looks like, imagine like you're gauging the weather. It looks like something is going to happen August 23rd. Yeah. What it's going to be? Are they going to do the SDRs, or do they want me to think they're going to do the SDRs, or do they want you to think that they think that you think they're going to do the SDRs? It's like in that poker game where the guy's staring right at me. Well, if it's his first time playing, there's a good chance he might be bluffing, but maybe if he's experienced, he wants me to think it's his first. It's like, and I think that's what you see happening. It's what are politicians? They're a bunch of people lying, screwing each other, and they're all, it's like we think there's Democrats and Republicans, but they're guys that change parties. The guys that sell each other out when they have the bills will be like 98-2 or something, because this guy gets, we really want to ram this one down their throat, but we're going to have to buy off one of the Republicans here. So, they make some.
You have to be a rhino this year so that we get that vote for that's actually going to benefit the Dems. And
right. So BS. You're playing a game where the nature of it is that you have imperfect information. But I would say, like, if you even have like 12% of this right, when the rest of the planet doesn't even know that the game is being played, which I think is essentially what's happened. How does so much of this stuff get missed? I know, sometimes for the people who are seeing the things, it's like, and I, feel this, been guilty of this as well, where it's like, how come people don't see this yet? Think about it. We have the effects of, we don't really know how dangerous a GMO is. We're worried about the COVID vaccine now, and I'm realizing the other day, well, geez, I think I have that polio vaccine. Who knows what the heck is in there? Maybe there's a LoJack in there. When you think about the technology that's available, if you have a wireless headphone, let's say someone else has the control, you can hear voices in your head. You just hide things. We have a little micro. I only hear the tip of the iceberg about what's in any of these things. And again, back to September 11th, if they were using a Tesla coil that, by the way, just struck lightning on the Washington Monument on right on the day, just sure that's a coincidence, nothing related to HARP. But if that's the level of technology, and then we think this is the future, but what I realized last week, I'm like, wait a second. We always think like people back in the 1920s were like, riding their horses to work and like, they're like, well, one day they'll figure out electricity. But these guys dropped not one, I might add, but 2 atom bombs allegedly in 1945. If it killed everyone in Japan, is it possible that radiation affected people other parts of the world?
Yeah, how poisoned are we currently?
I hear there are scientists who say the radiation from the Japanese power plant got into the water. And I would suggest the kind of people that are crazy enough to actually launch a nuclear bomb aren't really like planning this stuff out and thinking it. So I think you add all this stuff up. That's how people get hypnotized. And that's how, I hear 2 sides of the story now, that some people think COVID is very dangerous, and a lot of people are getting really concerned about the effects of the vaccine and thinking that the vaccine is the dangerous thing. Right. And that's going to be up to every person to decide what they put in their body. Although I would just suggest that it seems that a lot of these scams that have been going on, not just for the last 10 years, but decades or probably hundreds of years. And if you consider the Roman Empire, well, a lot of that power was shifted to the Roman Catholic Church. British Empire,
Well,
they said
and the
here in
Pope
America,
came
yeah.
out. Yeah, the Pope came out today making a statement that taking the jab was an act of love. And, we know how manipulative all that has been.
Here's what I would suggest as a policy, that any person who feels they have the right to force the vaccine into other people, that let's say they're going to vaccinate 100 people. So somebody else aside from the politician gets to choose a needle at random and vaccinate that government official first to make sure that they're taking what they're dishing out. I mean, I see there was some, I can't even remember what country it was. Some guy was saying that people, if they want to go out in Australia, I believe, and have a beer, they have to be wearing a mask. And I'm like, how does that work? But then I'm like, wait a second. This fucking idiot's saying that. He wasn't wearing a mask.
Well, and the Pfizer CEO got refused from his vacation in Italy because he wasn't jabbed himself. So when the CEOs of these companies creating these themselves are not taking it, why do you think that they're, the whole thing is just insane. But anyway, I was wanting to talk to you about the whole money thing because I just was not understanding what an SDR was. There's a lot of people that are telling me that SDRs are created when new like baskets of currency or new monetary systems are created. And so I didn't understand like what an SDR was, why that's being created, why SDRs are going to all these countries, why the IMF is sending SDRs on August 23rd. Like, what's this magical date? Why is this being sent to all these countries? Why is the IMF making this weird quiz tweet? Like, I just thought it was bizarre. So I was hoping you would help. Yeah.
You just solved it.
Yeah. But that seems really weird.
No, you just solved it. See, I told you before, sometimes sometimes you just got to hit the hot tub and, take a play off, because
the hot tub time machine.
When you started asking the question, I wasn't sure of the answer, although about halfway through it actually just clicked in, along with the matrix code that I told you about before we started. I've been assembling essentially 40 years of data and a lot of interesting things coming in now. And it just makes sense now, where we put it like this. Is this financial system stable?
No.
Well, maybe we don't know the exact day. Would you say it's a matter of when rather than if that this is collapsing? Yeah?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay. So even in Bretton Woods or, when FDR, although there is, if you look up the business plot, a school of thought that JP Morgan and the gangsters actually attempted to overthrow FDR and were allegedly failed. Yet when I think about the way these things are operated, they usually make you think that, so that you don't really realize who is at the top. But in either case, any of these nefarious schemes, they didn't just roll out the gold confiscation. I mean, it wasn't just like the guy thought of it and boom, it's out there. I mean, they talked about it. They had meetings. They're like, well, you do this, we'll have this guy do that. Before you turn the camera on, you're like, well, I gotta get a glass of water, or do this, or get your pencil ready, or whatever you do. It's not an instant. And I would suggest that if you said that, you did say, I believe that that some sort of reset is a matter of when rather than if, right?
Mm-hmm.
So before the reset were actually known to the public, a lot of things would have to be done behind the scenes first, right? And perhaps if that's the way that the type of people who run banks and do things like this operate, then you could assume that before the public was officially notified, that there would be a lot going on behind the scenes if perhaps you knew where to look and were watching carefully like you and your viewers do, right? So rather than perhaps on August, what is today, the 18th, we'll have some idea more of the details of what exactly is happening with these SDRs. But when I think about that in the context of everything else that's happening, I mean, you can see the signs of the reset. I mean, Davos, they named their theme this year the Great Reset.
Yes.
Plus,
in your face. And for these people to say, oh, conspiracy theory and all this, I'm like, it's literally just it's not a conspiracy theory anymore.
To say that. The CIA was recognized with a specific initiative of creating the term conspiracy theory. And that's why I posted that video of George Bush, where it's like they said he vomited, and then they released this other footage where you hear, there's Barbara Bush, allegedly Aleister Crowley's daughter, had her napkin over his mouth and nose within seconds. And then you see, like, all of a sudden that other dude doesn't
pops up
anymore. And it's, maybe I can't say exactly what happened, but it's like, all right, clearly this is different than the story that they got everybody to believe for 30 years. Then add on, okay, we have GMOs, chemtrails, all these other effects. Plus, if you research what a TV actually is and how it was designed specifically to put the brain in an alpha wave state so you're more receptive to suggestion that you're a complete loser if your paper towels aren't as absorbent as your neighbors. There's a reason that these things add up and stack together, and most people don't know it. But that's why, another thing that helps me to feel, now there's a lot of stuff that I've heard or studied or conversations that, I share in the show. I won't go through every single data point tonight, but one in particular that stood out to me was listening to Cliff High's reports over the last couple months, because it was 2-3 months ago. He was saying, I don't know, maybe April, May, June, he was saying by July and August, the effects of this vaccine are going to be so overwhelmingly obvious that people are going to be revolting. Now, that's a little easier to believe today than it was 2 or 3 months ago. But now, what do we see around the globe? In Australia, they're chasing after children with needles, and they're starting to riot.
And Chris, these heartbreaking videos of these people with Bell's palsy, and there's a really heartbreaking video of a family that put their children in the trial for it, and like this little 12-year-old girl in a wheelchair with a feeding tube, and I mean, it's just heartbreaking.
The only other
results of it,
But I mean, in the end, it's interesting seeing a lot of, a month ago was, these 4 British Airways pilots, and it was like, oh, well, maybe they, there was no comment. Here's another sign you can look for when you want to know if someone's intention is pure or not. Find out who will look you in the eye and explain things to you. Notice how no comment about this. The way American corporations work, no comment. Hey, what happened with those weapons of mass destruction, Georgie? No comment. Hey, Dick, what happened? No comment.
Right.
Some people are happy to come and, whether it's good or bad news, explain, hey, this is what happened. This is why we thought. Those are the people that
the same thing that's happening with the audit is, give us the servers. Why are they fighting it so much? If it was the most honest election ever, then turn over the servers, give us the passwords. And they're fighting tooth and nail, So
it's like you have 8 million Ponzi schemes that are all interdependent, stacked upon each other, and the fuse has been lit. Imagine, like, maybe 10 years ago, 12 years ago, with the housing bubble, you had all these different mortgages, and that was bad. But it's now, instead of just the housing bubble, you have the derivative bubble, the student loan bubble, the paper silver bubble, the paper gold bubble, the stock bubble, the bond market bubble, which I might add U.S. Treasury's alleged safe haven in negative yielding territory. But then on top of all the financial bubbles, you have the COVID bubble. You have the big pharma bubble. You have everything that government has touched
Every industrial complex is imploding on itself
Yeah.
right now.
But the good news is that
I think that is the good news.
imagine, though, to me, at least, everyone can decide for themselves, but at least as someone who is running from the dust cloud and is sitting here watching how just a lot of this never made sense, and everything indicating that, I mean, here's the Bush family was business partners with bin Laden. There are reports that you can see on the internet for yourself that not only were they business partners, they were meeting on the morning of September 11th. Keep in mind that Osama bin Laden, interesting past, was in Soviet Afghanistan, connections with the CIA. And then also his brother Salam bin Laden died in a freak plane accident. Apparently the guy was supposedly a really good pilot. And then they were in, I think it was San Antonio or Houston. I believe San Antonio. I was reading about this recently. I don't remember the Bush family sharing this, which would have seemed like something relevant to publicize if you were doing a thorough investigation. And for some, it was like everyone described it as a freak accident. Like this plane went up here and we don't know why. Now, I know the CIA would never drug someone and lead to their death. Or actually, no, we know that they would because they've acknowledged that themselves. That's what MK Ultra was about. They stick it in the movies and they stick it in your face. Not really, possibly because they think it's funny, but also as it finally the last piece clicked into place, that's how they lodge it in the subconscious. That's how to condition people to be ready for it. That's why you saw the references to 911 before it happened. That's why in The Big Short, remember that scene where you see Brad Pitt? He's playing Ben Rickards. He's going up the escalator and he's wearing the mask. And then it's funny.
Some of that is that satanic. So in the satanic culture, they have, for them to have the full like power effect, they have to put it in your face. They have to show you. So that's
it's like a subliminal, which it's interesting.
Yeah.
Now, last week I was editing a lot of video and just thinking of, I'm just trying to make the best video, and I'm realizing that, especially, you have the TV, put in a hypnotic state with the frequencies. It's kind of like, is a knife good or bad? Well, if you cook a beautiful dinner, it's great. If you harm someone with it, so it comes down to the intention. And again, government, is it? I don't know. If you told me that Joe Biden turns in Nancy Pelosi or they turn on each other at some point the next week, I mean, I wouldn't be shocked. I mean, it's like you see how sociopathic criminals act when they get caught. Imagine the guys in the mafia movies. They're always tough when they're beating someone over the head with a gun or bullying someone, or they got the deck stacked in their favor. But then when they get caught, or when their gun runs out of bullets, and then they start to get even a sample of what they've been dishing out for a long time. That is, so I mean, that it's a 45-minute answer to your question, but it's not just the finance. This was inevitable. Maybe it could have taken another 1,000 years, but once the slaves realized, wait a second, we're making all this stuff. Why don't we just throw this guy in the lake? And, again, I hear a lot of different schools of thought, what the military is doing, but I mean, if I can see this stuff, maybe it takes 30 years. Maybe it's just one guy, but he's like, I don't know what to do, but maybe it's his last, he knows he's about to get caught, but he leaves a clue somewhere, hoping someone will find it. That's what it feels like to me. That's what led me to say to you last week, why I thought, I'm like, I don't know. It's like, get this data from my model. I don't know what it means, but that's what I'm picking up. And then we have whatever happened in Afghanistan. And oddly, circle back, Psaki happened to be on vacation. And Joe Biden decided to take vacation. And wait a second, if he was going to do something in Afghanistan, you would think he knew about that beforehand. So he planned whatever he was doing in Afghanistan right in front of his vacation. And to me, that fits in the category, okay, maybe he's telling the truth and he's just completely reckless and dangerous and should be taken away from the ability to harm. This guy has the ability to press a nuke button. I sure hope not, or else he's a lying.
He's never had the
in history with some very notorious names.
Never had the code.
Maybe there's another outcome that I can't see, but at least as I'm looking at the data, those are the two main possibilities that I'm able to come up with at this point.
Yeah. I don't believe he's ever had the codes, but I don't even think that's him. So there's that. Well, thank you so much for helping me unpack some of that, because I'm just like watching this stuff fly around. I'm not understanding, you know, these terms, but I know it's significant. And I'm just like, how is this happening and no one's screaming about it? Like,
no. They are. You're one of them. And the people watching, they're there. It's just, that's when you hear people saying it's an information war, that's how media is used. That's why it's what's happening. It's not that any one person is doing it. Everybody's standing up together. It's like you can win the war just by, you know, thinking about the things that you're seeing and being open to other opinions. Hey, I'm not saying everything I said is correct. I can't say that for sure. It's the best. It's with integrity. I'm the best I can figure out. But there's a lot of stuff. It's like, we don't know who's going to pull what surprise that can change. I mean, it's like, who knew? It seems like somebody cooked up this COVID thing, whether it's the COVID or the vaccine is the bad. Someone's getting, a lot of people are getting sick. A lot of stuff is happening, and it doesn't seem like it was an accident. And rather than, again, back to your question of like, well, how do we do? Don't need to know every answer now. There's some degree to which, as things unfold, it's like, you know, it makes more sense today than it did a week ago. And I think if anybody who's watching this, Lisa, you're already prepared. Even if you didn't have any gold or silver or cryptos, just the fact that, you know, I realize, you know, just the fact that we're thinking about these things, and then you realize, wait, well, there are other people who, you know, there's some who don't get it, but there are a lot of good people out there. And, you know, no matter what, I mean, where does money or wealth come from? Outside of corporations, it's providing value, solving a problem. So even if somebody does, if you're just considering these things, if you're still listening, your subconscious mind, you may agree or see differently than what I'm saying, but your mind is exploring these possibilities. And if this stuff does unfold, hey, maybe the world goes on like it's always been. You can do what you've always done. But if something does happen, I would suggest that anyone who's still listening to this right now, you're far more prepared. You're one of the people that's going to be called on. This is the first time you're hearing this, or the 500th. You know more than the guy that's working in, you know, at Microsoft right now, probably.
That's clueless. Yeah, that's for sure. Well, thank you so much. I want to end the stream with your warm up. So Christopher is not only brilliant in finance and silver and what is happening globally, but he is a crazy talented musician. And hopefully we can get him out of Mexico and back up in the U.S. at one of my meetups.
I thought we were going on tour together, right?
If you will come to the U.S., you got to come to the U.S. because I'm not getting poked or nasally raped to go to Mexico. So,
well, Lisa, here's, may I ask you one question before you wrap up?
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, I'm really wondering about this because it seems to me, this is my gut feel. I can't say this is what's happening, but it seems to me like the dirtbags got caught. And I'm wondering, it's like right now I hear you have to have the vaccine or the brain poker they jam up your nose. Mm-hmm. But it's becoming that obvious that all this stuff is disturbingly evil hoax of some disgusting nature. I mean, wouldn't you think at some point, you know, even if those are the policies today that you need that, I'm wondering, would it go away soon? I was thinking, I mean, I guess we'll find out, but
I am still really hopeful for that. And if so, I mean, Charlie and I are on a plane and at Silverfest too for
what if I find one of the government underground tunnels and we can just build like a little silver transporter to like,
I'm there. Yeah,
there. I
we
hear
are
those
so
guys don't
there.
have to take vaccines or have a brain poker test. And I
We are
think that's
absolutely.
perhaps one thought to leave people with tonight. I feel as if the tables have turned. I
I
can't
think
say
that's a
that
great way.
100%,
I'm the
but
hopium, yeah, I'm the hopium hustler, so I think that's a great thing to end that on. Is that I agree. I think the truth is coming out, and I would love to end that on that note that the tables have turned, stuff is changing. We can look at that truth is coming out. Hopefully, more and more people are seeing that, and that we can be released from this kind of evil stuff and look at those possibilities in the future. And then we can all be at Silverfest,
yeah, and
the
you have a lot of
Inbox.
silver to give away, as I hear it, Lisa.
I know, and so we're doing that on our happy hour roadshow. Thank you for the 50 ounces of silver we will be putting in people's hands.
I still get to be your sponsor, so we can continue getting helping you get silver into people's hands.
Yeah, I'm really excited about
Yeah.
that. I've been sharing your channel and Arcadia Economics and been telling people about how passionate you are about getting physical silver in people's hands that do not have silver previously. And I was telling them about,
Is in a radioactive world. I'll just mention
uh,
that.
well, that's a great point to bring up with, the healing properties of silver. I was telling them how, Cannon had wrecked on his bike, and I was putting colloidal silver on it and telling him how, it heals your
Throw
feet.
some silver on it; it'll be fine in the
It'll
morning.
be fine. Yeah. So thanks for that. So I'm gonna have us, instead of ending with my little clip, I think we should end with our little. Let's see. I think I can do this way. Make sure that it shares. Cheers, Christopher.
Door for you.
Amazing. Completely amazing. Christopher, you're brilliant. I love you.
That was
Thanks.
great with silver. So I'll look forward to seeing you on the tour. We'll figure out passports. Freedom's going to reign. Silver price is going to go up soon enough. So everybody smile and celebrate. It might go down a little bit before it goes up, but good things are coming. And Lisa, I'm really proud of everything you've done. Thank you for being such a great inspiration. And yeah, I really will be looking forward to going on tour with you.
All
So
right. Let's
fun.
do
Good
that.
things happening in the world.
All right. Love you. Good night. Thank you so much. All right. Bye.